Everyone thinks death is the end, that when someone disappears from your life, they are gone, completely erased from the universe as if they never existed anywhere except in your memory. That idea feels so obvious that nobody questions it. It feels built into reality itself. You watch someone take their last breath, and everything in you tells you that something has just vanished forever. But physics says that intuition is wrong. Not emotionally wrong, not philosophically wrong, literally wrong. According to the equations that describe the universe, nothing that has ever happened is ever erased. Not your past, not your memories, not the people you have lost. Every moment still exists. Right now, this is not speculation. This is the direct implication of the work of Albert Einstein and the theory that reshaped our understanding of reality itself. Because the deeper you go into modern physics, the more unsettling the picture becomes. Time is not what you think it is. It does not flow. It does not carry events away into some disappearing past. At the most fundamental level, the universe does not distinguish between what you call the past, the present, and the future. The idea that time is moving, that moments are being created and then destroyed, is something your brain experiences, not something the universe is doing. And if that is true, then something even stranger follows. The people you think you have lost are not gone. The moments you think have ended have not disappeared. They are still there, fixed in the structure of reality itself, as real as the moment you are in right now. You cannot reach them. You cannot go back. But that is not the same thing as them not existing. And if you follow this idea all the way to its conclusion, it forces you to confront a possibility that sounds almost impossible to accept. Death may not be the end of existence. It may be something far more unsettling than that. You feel time moving. That feeling is so constant, so undeniable, that it becomes the foundation for everything else you believe about reality. The past is behind you. The future is ahead of you. And right now, this moment feels like the only thing that truly exists. But when physicists write down the equations that actually describe the universe, something strange happens. That flow disappears. The mathematics does not include it. At the deepest level, the laws that govern reality do not care which direction time moves in. Take classical motion. The equations work perfectly whether time moves forward or backward. A planet orbiting a star follows the same path in reverse as it does going forward. Nothing breaks, nothing changes. The same is true for electromagnetism. The equations that describe light and electricity remain valid if you run time backward. Even in quantum mechanics, where reality behaves in ways that defy common sense, the fundamental equation still does not prefer a direction. And when you get to the work of Albert Einstein, the picture becomes even clearer. The equations of relativity, the ones that describe gravity, space, and time as a single unified structure, also do not distinguish between past and future. There is no built-in arrow pointing from one to the other, no preferred direction. At the most fundamental level of reality, time does not flow. It does not push events from future to past or carry them away into nothingness. It simply exists as part of the structure. The only place where a direction appears is not in the fundamental laws, but in something else entirely, a statistical effect, a tendency, a rule about large numbers of particles known as entropy. You see a glass fall and shatter. You never see the shards spontaneously reassemble into a perfect glass. You watch fire burn, but never unburn. This creates the illusion that time must be moving in one direction, but that direction is not coming from time itself. It is coming from probability, from the overwhelming likelihood that disorder increases rather than decreases. At the level of individual particles, every interaction is still reversible. Nothing in the deep structure of reality forces time to move forward. And if nothing in the universe is actually pushing time along, then the feeling that the past is gone and the future has not arrived is not a property of time itself. It is a property of how you experience it. If this still feels abstract, like something that only exists in equations, then there is a problem. Because if physics is going to challenge something as fundamental as time, it cannot just remain on paper. It has to show up in the real world. It has to be measurable. And this is where things become undeniable. We have tested this directly in experiments that physically change how reality behaves. In 1971, two physicists, Joseph Hafele and Richard Keating, took some of the most precise devices ever built, atomic clocks, and did something remarkably simple. They placed these clocks on airplanes and flew them around the Earth, both eastward and westward, while identical clocks remained on the ground. When the flights were complete, they compared the results. If time were absolute, if it flowed the same way everywhere, all of the clocks should have matched perfectly. But they didn't. The clocks on the planes ticked at different rates compared to the ones on Earth. Not because of mechanical failure, not because of measurement error, but because time itself behaved differently for them. Exactly as predicted by theory of relativity. The difference was tiny, measured in nanoseconds, but it was real. More importantly, it was consistent, repeatable, and precisely aligned with the theory. Time is not universal. It does not pass at the same rate for everyone. If you think that difference is too small to matter, then you are already relying on a system that would completely fail without accounting for it. Every time you open a map on your phone, every time GPS tells you where you are depending on satellites orbiting the Earth, each equipped with atomic clocks. These satellites move at extremely high speeds and exist in weaker gravitational fields than those on the surface. Both of these factors change how time passes for them. Their clocks tick at a different rate than clocks on the ground. If engineers ignored this, if they assumed time was the same everywhere, GPS would drift by kilometers every single day. It would become useless almost immediately. The only reason it works is because the system constantly corrects for the fact that time does not behave the way your intuition says it should. Your phone works because time is not what you think it is. This is not a theory waiting to be proven. This is a theory already embedded into the infrastructure of your daily life. And once you accept that, time can stretch, slow down, and speed up depending on motion and gravity, then a much larger conclusion begins to emerge. If time is not constant, if it does not flow the same way for everyone, then maybe it is not flowing at all. Once you accept that time does not behave the way you thought, that it can stretch, slow down, and speed up depending on motion and gravity, something deeper begins to emerge. Because these effects are not random. They are not isolated quirks. They all point toward a single idea. Time is not something separate from the universe. It is part of its structure. This is where the work of Albert Einstein becomes unavoidable. In relativity, space and time are not two different things. They are woven together into a single entity known as spacetime. 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time, forming a 4-dimensional structure that everything exists inside. And in this structure, time does not behave like a flowing river. It behaves like a coordinate. Just like you can describe where something is using length, width, and height, you also describe when something is using time. That means an event is not something that happens and then disappears. It is something that exists at a specific location in this 4-dimensional structure. Your birth is not just something that happened and vanished. It exists at a precise coordinate in space-time. Your childhood, your memories, every conversation you have ever had, all of them are fixed at their own positions. They are not moving away. You are. This is the shift that changes everything. Because if time is a dimension, then the idea of moments being created and destroyed starts to break down. Events do not come into existence and then fade into nothing. They simply occupy different coordinates. The same way a city does not disappear just because you left it. Your past does not disappear just because you move beyond it. It is still there, located where it always was. You just cannot access it anymore. And this leads directly to one of the most unsettling implications of relativity. What you call now is not universal. There is no single moment that the entire universe agrees is happening at the same time. Two observers moving relative to each other will disagree about which events are happening right now. Their present moments do not line up. This is not a trick of perception. This is a physical fact built into the structure of space-time. And if there is no universal present, then the idea that only now is real begins to collapse. Because if different observers have different versions of the present, then which one is the real one? The uncomfortable answer is that they all are. And if that is true, then the past and the future cannot simply be illusions or things that do not exist. They must exist just as much as the present does, each at their own coordinates in the structure. The universe is not a story that is being written moment by moment. It is something much stranger. It is a complete structure where every moment already has its place. If every moment has its own place in this four-dimensional structure, then something radical follows. The universe is not unfolding. It is not being created frame by frame like a movie playing forward. Instead, it already exists as a complete object. Physicists call this idea the block universe, and it is one of the most direct interpretations of relativity. In this view, reality is not something that happens. It is something that simply is. Past, present, and future are not different kinds of existence. They are different locations. Every moment of your life exists just as permanently as every other. Your birth, your childhood, this moment right now, and your future are all part of the same structure, laid out across the dimension of time, the same way cities are laid out across space. Nothing is coming into existence. Nothing is leaving it. Everything is already there. The only thing that changes is your position within it. You are moving along your path through space-time, experiencing one slice at a time, giving you the illusion that events are appearing and disappearing. But from the perspective of the full structure, nothing is being created or destroyed. This is not just a philosophical interpretation. It is the most natural reading of the equations of Tuyet Tung Doi. When physicists calculate how gravity bends space-time, how black holes form, or how galaxies move, they are working with a model where the entire structure exists at once. And if you take that model seriously, then every moment you have ever lived is still there, fixed in place. Think about a specific memory. Not something dramatic, but something ordinary. A quiet morning. Sitting across from someone you care about. Light coming through a window. A conversation that felt small at the time. That moment feels gone. Completely gone. But in the block universe, it is not gone at all. It exists at its coordinates, exactly as it was. The light is still coming through the window. The words are still being spoken. The version of you in that moment is still sitting there, unaware of everything that would come after. You cannot return to it, not because it no longer exists, but because the structure does not allow you to move backward along your path. The same way you cannot instantly jump to another city without traveling the distance, you cannot jump to another moment in time without crossing the structure, and the laws of physics do not allow that. But the existence of that moment does not depend on your ability to reach it. It is still there. And if that is true, then something even more unsettling follows. The idea that things are lost forever starts to collapse, because nothing in this structure is being erased. Events are not disappearing into a void. They are simply located somewhere you can no longer access. Now take that idea and make it personal, not abstract, not theoretical. Think about someone you have lost, someone who is no longer part of your present life. Maybe it was sudden, maybe it was expected, but either way, there is a moment your mind keeps returning to, a specific place, a specific time, a version of them that feels more real than anything else. The way they laughed, the way they spoke, the way they existed in those ordinary moments that did not seem important at the time. And now those moments feel like everything. Your intuition tells you those moments are gone, that they exist only as fading patterns inside your brain, that what you are remembering is not the thing itself, but just a weak echo of something that no longer exists anywhere in the universe. But if the structure of reality is what relativity suggests, then that intuition is incomplete. Because in the block universe, those moments are not memories in the sense of being all that remains. They are locations, real physical coordinates in space-time where those events are still happening. That version of them is still there. The conversation is still unfolding. The light in that room is still falling exactly the way it did. Nothing about that moment has been erased. The only thing that has changed is your position relative to it. You have moved forward along your path through time, carried by the same processes that move everything else, and that has created distance between you and those coordinates. And distance feels like loss. It feels like absence. Because you cannot interact with those moments anymore. You cannot step back into them. You cannot create new ones that connect to them. But inability to access something is not the same as it not existing. You have already experienced this in a simpler way. Think about a place you once lived. A house you left years ago. That place still exists. The rooms are still there. The walls, the windows, the light at a certain time of day. The fact that you are no longer there does not erase it. It only means you are somewhere else now. Relativity extends this idea from space into time. The past is not destroyed. It is somewhere you have already been. And when you apply that idea to a person, the implication becomes much harder to ignore. The person you think is not gone in the way you imagine. Every version of them, at every moment they were alive, still exists at its coordinates in the structure of space-time. The child they were, the adult you knew, the last time you saw them, all of it is still there, complete, intact, unchanged. What you have lost is not their existence. It is your ability to move through the structure to where they are. And this is where the idea becomes almost impossible to ignore. Because if a life is not erased, if it is not deleted from the universe, then what exactly is death? The way you have always understood it is simple. A person exists, and then they stop existing. A clear boundary before and after, presence and absence. But in a universe described by relativity, that clean separation begins to break down. Death is not the moment someone is removed from reality. It is the moment their path through space-time reaches its final coordinate. That is all. Nothing behind that point is erased. Nothing before it disappears. The entire life remains, fully laid out in the structure, from the first moment to the last, a complete shape extending through time. Imagine a road that stretches across a landscape. It has a beginning and an end. If you stand at the end of the road, you might say the road stops there, but that does not mean the rest of the road behind you has vanished. Every mile still exists. Every turn, every stretch, every place you pass through is still part of the structure. A life is the same. The end does not erase the rest of it. It simply marks the boundary. And this is the distinction that changes everything. Gone from reach is not the same as gone from existence. In the block universe, nothing that has happened is ever removed. The universe does not go back and delete events. It does not rewrite its own structure. It only allows movement in one direction along the path you experience. And that movement creates the illusion that things are being lost. But what you are actually experiencing is separation, not erasure. The person you think is gone has not been subtracted from reality. They have become unreachable from where you are now. And that difference is subtle, but it is enormous, because it means that every moment of their life still exists exactly as it did when it was first lived. Every conversation, every ordinary day, every small detail that seemed insignificant at the time, all of it remains fixed in the structure of space-time. Nothing has been taken away. The universe has not lost them. You have simply moved beyond the coordinates where they are. And if you take this idea seriously, then death stops being a disappearance and becomes something else entirely. It becomes a limit, a boundary, the point where a path ends, but not the point where existence is erased. And just when this picture starts to settle, relativity introduces something even more unsettling. It challenges not just what time is, but what now even mean? Because everything you have been thinking so far still depends on one hidden assumption, that there is a shared present moment, that somewhere there is a universal now slicing across the universe, separating the past from the future. But according to relativity, that assumption is wrong. There is no single moment that everyone agrees is happening at the same time. What you call now depends on how you are moving. Two observers traveling at different speeds or in different gravitational fields will disagree about which events are happening right now. Their present moments are not the same. And this is not a matter of perception or measurement error. It is a built-in feature of the structure described by theory of relativity. Imagine someone moving away from Earth at a significant fraction of the speed of light. From their perspective, events that you consider part of the past may line up with what they call their present moment. Things that happened years ago, for you could, in a very real physical sense, be happening now for them. At the same time, events you consider present might already belong to their past. The ordering of time itself becomes relative. And if there is no universal present, then the idea that only the present exists begins to collapse. Because which present are you talking about? Yours, theirs? Both are equally valid within the laws of physics. And if multiple versions of now can exist depending on the observer, then the past cannot simply be something that no longer exists. It must be something that still exists at its own coordinates, capable of being part of someone else's present, depending on their motion through space-time. This is the point where the intuition completely breaks, because it suggests something that feels almost impossible to accept. Your past is not gone. It is not even strictly past in any absolute sense. It is a region of space-time that you have moved away from, but one that can still be aligned with the present moment of another observer. In other words, what you experienced years ago is not universally over. It is just no longer part of your now. And if that is true, then the boundary between past and present is not a fundamental feature of reality. It is something that depends on where you are and how you are moving through space-time. The universe does not divide itself into what is and what was. That division exists only from your perspective. And once you remove the idea of a universal present, the final piece falls into place. The past is not a memory of something that disappeared. It is a location. If the past is still there, if every moment still exists at its own coordinates, then there is one final question that refuses to go away. Why does it feel so completely gone? Why does loss feel like something has been removed from the universe instead of something you have simply moved away from? Because the feeling is real. The absence is real. The silence, the gap, the fact that new moments are no longer being created with that person, all of that is undeniable. And this is where the answer shifts away from relativity and into something else. Not time itself, but how processes unfold within time. The answer comes from entropy. Entropy is what gives you the sense that time has a direction. It is the reason you remember the past but not the future. It is the reason a broken glass does not reassemble, a burned match does not unburn, and a life, once it reaches its final coordinate, does not continue creating new events. Entropy describes how systems evolve from order to disorder, from concentrated states to more spread out ones. And in doing so, it leaves traces, records of what has already happened. Your memory is one of those records. The physical structure of your brain stores information about past states, about things that have already occurred. But there are no equivalent records of the future because those events have not yet been encountered along your path. This creates a powerful asymmetry. You are surrounded by evidence of the past, but none of the future. And that asymmetry feels like time is moving forward, like the past is disappearing and the future is coming into existence. But what you are actually experiencing is not time itself. You are experiencing the direction in which entropy increases. The arrow you feel is not built into the fabric of time. It is built into the way physical systems evolve. And that is why loss feels the way it does. When someone is alive, new traces are constantly being created. New conversations, new memories, new physical records in the world. But when their path reaches its final coordinate, that process stops. No new traces are added. The accumulation ends. And your brain interprets that as absence, as something being taken away. But the past traces remain. The photographs, the recordings, the memories, all of them point backward to moments that still exist in the structure of space-time. What has changed is not their existence. It is the flow of new information. You are no longer receiving new data from those coordinates, and that creates the overwhelming sense that something has vanished. But according to the physics, nothing has been removed. The structure is still there, complete and unchanged. You are simply no longer interacting with that part of it. The feeling of loss is real. But what it tells you about reality is only part of the story. At this point, we have reached the edge of what physics can say. It has taken you from the intuition that time flows to the realization that it does not, from the belief that the past disappears to the possibility that it still exists, from the idea that death is an ending to the idea that it may simply be a boundary in a much larger structure. But there is a line that even the most powerful theories cannot cross. Physics can describe the structure of reality. It can tell you where events are, how they relate to each other, how space-time bends and evolves, but it cannot fully answer what it means to experience those events. The equations behind theory of relativity describe a universe where every moment of your life is permanently written into the fabric of space-time, a complete structure where nothing is erased, nothing is undone, and every event remains exactly where it occurred. In that sense, your life is not something that will be preserved after you are gone. It is something that is already preserved at every coordinate you have ever occupied. Every conversation, every decision, every ordinary moment that seemed unimportant at the time, all of it exists as part of that structure. But physics does not tell you whether those moments are still being experienced. It does not tell you whether the version of you that exists at those past coordinates is conscious, aware, or simply part of the geometry. That question belongs to something deeper, something physics has not yet been able to explain. Consciousness, what it is, how it arises, and whether it is tied to a moving present or embedded throughout the structure. This is where certainty ends, but what remains is still something precise. The universe, as far as our best theories can describe it, does not delete what happens inside it. It does not erase events. It does not remove lives from existence. It allows them to unfold along a path, and then it leaves them exactly where they are. When Albert Einstein wrote that the distinction between past, present, and future is a stubbornly persistent illusion, he was not trying to comfort anyone. He was stating what the equations implied. That the person who is no longer part of your present has not been erased from reality. They have become part of its structure, fixed, permanent, unreachable, but not absent. And maybe that is the final shift. The one that changes how you see everything that has already happened. The past is not something that slipped away. It is something you have moved beyond. Every moment of your life is still there, exactly as it was, written into the geometry of space-time. Nothing has been taken from the universe. It has only carried you forward, leaving everything else exactly where it has always been.